My adopted daughter didn't know what a birthday was, and it destroyed me. Right after I got married to my husband, we started trying for a family. We'd painted the nursery yellow because we wanted it to be a surprise. We'd picked out names, bought tiny clothes, read all the parenting books. But after 3 miscarriages and 2 failed IVF attempts, the doctor sat us down and said it wasn't going to happen naturally. The grief was suffocating, watching everyone around us have babies while we attended baby showers with forced smiles and went home to an empty nursery. After 2 years of that pain, my husband suggested adoption. I wasn't ready at first because it felt like admitting defeat, like giving up on the dream I'd held since childhood. But then I visited the foster care website one night and saw her photo. 7 years old with dark eyes that looked too old for her face and an expression that seemed to be bracing for disappointment. Her name was Iris, and the description said she'd been in the system since she was 3. Something about her photo wouldn't leave my mind for days. I showed my husband and he felt it too, that inexplicable pull toward this child we'd never met. We filled out the application and went through months of home studies, background checks, parenting classes, and interviews. The social worker assigned to Iris's case was named Diane Murphy, and she was honest about the situation in a way that scared me. She said Iris had been removed from her biological mother's care after neighbors reported seeing a small child left alone in an apartment for days at a time. The mother had severe addiction issues and would disappear for weeks, leaving Iris to fend for herself. When they found her, she was 4 years old, malnourished, and had been eating toothpaste because there was no food in the apartment. She'd been in 3 different foster homes since then, each placement failing for various reasons that Diane delicately called behavioral challenges. I asked what that meant, and Diane said Iris hoarded food, had severe trust issues, and would sometimes hurt herself when she got overwhelmed. The description should have scared us away, but instead it made me more determined. This little girl needed someone who wouldn't give up on her like everyone else had. We met Iris for the first time at a park on a Saturday morning in October. She sat on a bench next to Diane, wearing jeans that were too short and a jacket that didn't fit properly. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she wouldn't make eye contact when we said hello. My husband brought a soccer ball, thinking maybe she'd want to play, but she just stared at it like she didn't understand what it was for. We sat on the bench with her for an hour, trying to make conversation while she gave one-word answers and kept her arms wrapped tight around herself. When it was time to leave, Diane asked if she wanted to see us again, and Iris shrugged. On the drive home, I cried because the visit felt like a failure. But my husband pointed out she hadn't asked to leave early, which Diane said was actually progress. We had supervised visits twice a week for the next 2 months. Slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice it happening, Iris started to relax around us. She'd answer questions with full sentences instead of just shrugs. She laughed once at something my husband said, then immediately looked scared like she'd done something wrong. We brought her to our house for a day visit, and she walked through every room like she was in a museum, barely touching anything, asking permission before she sat on the furniture. I made lunch and she ate everything on her plate so fast I worried she'd choke, then asked in a whisper if there was more. I said of course and gave her seconds and thirds, watching her put away more food than seemed possible for someone her size. My husband caught my eye across the table, and I saw the same heartbreak I felt reflected in his face. After lunch, she asked where the bathroom was and disappeared for 20 minutes. When she came out, I noticed the hand soap was half empty. Diane explained later that hoarding and overconsumption were common in kids who'd experienced severe neglect. Iris's brain was still operating from a place of scarcity, believing she had to take everything now because there might not be anything later. The official adoption went through in February, 6 months after we first saw her photo. The judge asked Iris if she wanted to be part of our family, and she nodded once, still not making eye contact with anyone. We took her home that day with 2 garbage bags of belongings that represented everything she owned in the world. One bag had clothes that mostly didn't fit. The other had a broken toy phone, 3 rocks she'd apparently collected, and a blanket so worn it was barely holding together. My husband carried the bags to her new room while I helped her out of the car. She stood in our driveway looking at the house like she was waiting for someone to tell her it was a joke. I took her hand and it was so small and cold in mine. Her room had been decorated carefully. Not the nursery we'd painted years ago, but a space we'd designed specifically for her. Purple walls because Diane said that was her favorite color. A bed with a thick comforter and more pillows than necessary. A bookshelf with new books still in their wrappers. A desk for homework. Stuffed animals arranged on the bed. When Iris saw it, she stopped in the doorway and didn't move. I asked if she liked it and she whispered, "This is all mine?" I said yes. Everything in this room belongs to you and no one will take it away. She walked over to the bed and touched the comforter with just her fingertips, like it might disappear. Then she asked where she was really going to sleep. The question confused me until I realized she didn't believe a room this nice could actually be hers. I knelt down to her level and promised this was really her room and her bed and her space. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. That night, she slept on the floor next to the bed with her old blanket. The first few weeks were an adjustment that doesn't really capture how difficult it actually was. Iris would wake up at 5 a.m. and be dressed and waiting by the door like she expected to be moved to another house. She asked every single day when she had to leave and where she was going next. Every time I said she wasn't going anywhere, that this was her home now, she'd nod and not believe me. Mealtimes were particularly hard because she'd eat so fast she'd throw up, then cry because she thought we'd be angry about the mess. My husband or I would clean it up while reassuring her it was okay. Accidents happen. Nobody was mad. She'd apologize over and over in this tiny voice that broke my heart. We started giving her smaller portions and letting her know there was always more food available anytime she wanted it. We put snacks in her room and told her she could eat whenever she felt hungry. She hoarded everything at first, hiding crackers under her pillow and fruit in her closet. School was another challenge because Iris was academically behind from missing so much education in her early years. She could barely read at a second grade level despite being 7, and math was even worse. The school suggested holding her back a grade, but we decided to get her a tutor instead and work with her at home. Every evening after dinner, we'd sit at the kitchen table and do homework together. She'd get frustrated easily and shut down, putting her head on the table and refusing to try. My husband discovered she responded better to making it a game, turning math problems into stories about animals, or using colored markers to make reading more interesting. Progress was slow, but it was happening. She started sleeping in her actual bed after about a month, though she kept her old blanket and still occasionally slept on the floor when she had bad dreams. She stopped asking every day when she had to leave, though the question still came up once or twice a week. 3 months after the adoption, my birthday came around in May. My husband wanted to make it special and invited some family over for dinner. My parents came, my sister and her husband, my best friend Lauren. Everyone brought presents and cards, and my husband made my favorite meal. Iris sat at the table watching everything with wide, confused eyes. When everyone sang happy birthday and my husband brought out a cake with candles, she looked genuinely frightened by the fire. After I blew out the candles and started opening presents, she got up from the table and disappeared upstairs. I found her 20 minutes later sitting in her closet with the door closed. When I asked what was wrong, she said the yelling scared her. I realized she meant the singing. She'd never experienced a birthday party before and didn't understand what was happening. I sat on the floor outside her closet and explained through the door that birthdays were celebrations for the day someone was born, that every year we celebrate that person being alive and part of our lives. She opened the closet door a crack and asked why people were giving me things. I explained that giving presents was one way we showed people we loved them and were happy they were born. She thought about this for a long time, then asked, "Do I have one of those?" I didn't understand at first and asked what she meant. She said, "A birthday. Do I have a day like that?" My heart physically hurt in my chest, and I had to take several deep breaths before I could answer. I said, "Yes, of course she has a birthday. Everyone does." She asked when it was, and I realized I didn't know. Her file from the state had her birth date listed as September 8th, but Iris herself had no concept of this. I told her the date, and she repeated it like she was trying to memorize something important. Then she asked what birthdays were for again, and I went through the whole explanation a second time. She nodded slowly and said, "Nobody ever told me that before." I asked if she wanted to come back downstairs and have some cake, and she said okay, but stayed close to my side the rest of the evening. That night, after everyone left and Iris was asleep, I told my husband what had happened. We sat at the kitchen table with the leftover birthday cake neither of us could eat anymore, and just cried. The reality that this little girl had lived 7 years without knowing what a birthday was felt impossible. We'd been so focused on helping her adjust to living with us that we hadn't thought about all the normal childhood experiences she'd completely missed. My husband said her birthday was in 4 months and we should make it special. I agreed, but felt overwhelmed by the responsibility of giving her a first birthday party at age 7. How do you make up for 7 years of nothing? We started planning anyway, wanting to get it right. Over the next few months, Iris continued to make progress in small ways. She started calling us by our first names, Daniel and Rebecca, though not Mom and Dad yet. Diane had warned us that might take a long time or might never happen, and we'd made peace with that. She made a friend at school, a girl named Zara, who invited her over for a playdate. We drove her to Zara's house, and I watched Iris walk up to the door with her shoulders hunched like she expected something bad to happen. When I picked her up 2 hours later, she was smiling, actually smiling, and told me they'd played with dolls and Zara's mom had given them cookies. She asked if Zara could come to our house sometime, and I said absolutely. Having Zara over revealed more gaps in Iris's understanding of normal childhood. When Zara suggested they play hide and seek, Iris didn't know the rules. When Zara wanted to watch a movie and asked what Iris liked, she just stared blankly because she'd barely seen any children's movies. We started a list of things to introduce her to, feeling overwhelmed by how much she'd missed. As September got closer, we finalized birthday plans. We'd keep it small since Iris got overwhelmed by too many people. Just us, my parents, my sister's family, Lauren, and Zara with her parents. We ordered a cake from the bakery with purple frosting and flowers. We bought decorations and presents, trying not to go overboard but wanting her to feel celebrated. The hardest part was keeping it a surprise while also preparing Iris for what was going to happen so she wouldn't be scared. A week before her birthday, we sat her down and explained we were going to have a party to celebrate her. She asked why, and we reminded her about birthdays being the day someone was born. She remembered and asked if people were going to yell again, meaning sing. We said yes, they'd sing happy birthday to her specifically, and there would be cake and presents. She looked anxious and asked if she had to do anything. Daniel said no, she just had to be there and let people celebrate her. She seemed unconvinced this was a good idea, but nodded anyway. We showed her the calendar and counted down the days together each morning. She'd ask questions like whether the singing was going to be loud, whether she'd have to eat the cake if she didn't like it, whether people would be mad if she didn't want to open presents in front of everyone. The morning of September 8th arrived, and I woke up before my alarm, too anxious to sleep. We'd decorated the living room and kitchen the night before after Iris went to bed. Streamers and balloons and a big banner that said, "Happy Birthday, Iris." When she came downstairs in her pajamas and saw everything, she froze at the bottom of the stairs. She stared at the decorations and the banner with her name on it. Daniel came up behind her and said, "Happy birthday," and she turned to look at him with an expression I couldn't quite read. She asked if this was all for her, and we said yes. She walked slowly into the living room, looking at everything like she was in a museum again. She stopped in front of the banner and reached up to touch the letters of her name. Then she asked in a small voice, "Why?" The question destroyed me because the answer should have been obvious. Because you were born, because we're glad you exist, because you deserve to be celebrated. I knelt down and said all those things while she stared at the banner. She nodded, but I still don't think she really understood. People started arriving around noon. My parents came first with presents wrapped in shiny paper. Iris hung back behind me when they came in, and my mom very carefully didn't make a big fuss, just said hello and happy birthday in a calm voice. My sister arrived with her husband and their 2 kids, ages 5 and 9. Iris had met them before at my birthday, but still seemed wary. Lauren came with a present and a gentle smile. Finally, Zara and her parents arrived, and Iris relaxed slightly seeing her friend. We had lunch first, hot dogs and chips and fruit, easy food that wouldn't overwhelm anyone. Iris sat between Daniel and me and ate slowly, watching everyone else carefully. After lunch, it was time for cake. Daniel brought it out from the kitchen with 7 lit candles, and everyone started singing happy birthday. Iris's eyes went huge, and she grabbed my arm tight. I put my hand over hers and squeezed back, letting her know it was okay. When the singing ended, everyone clapped and Iris looked like she might cry. I explained she needed to make a wish and blow out the candles. She asked what kind of wish, and I said anything she wanted. She thought for a long time, staring at the candles while wax started dripping down the sides. Finally, she leaned forward and blew them all out in one breath. Everyone clapped again, and Iris managed a tiny smile. Daniel cut the cake and served everyone while Iris watched the purple frosting like she wasn't sure it was real. When I gave her a piece, she took one small bite, then another. She told me it was good and ate the entire slice slowly, savoring each bite in a way that made me want to cry. Then came presents, which I'd been dreading because I knew this might be overwhelming. We'd arranged them on the coffee table, about 8 presents total. Everyone had been briefed to keep gifts modest and practical. Iris stared at the pile and asked if all of those were for her. My dad said yes. Happy birthday, kiddo. She approached the presents carefully and picked up the smallest one from Lauren. She held it without opening it and asked if she had to give it back later. The room went very quiet, and Lauren said, "No, sweetie. Birthday presents are gifts that belong to you to keep forever." Iris absorbed this information and carefully unwrapped the present, peeling the tape off slowly instead of tearing the paper. Inside was a set of colored pencils and a sketchbook. Lauren said she noticed Iris liked drawing and thought she might enjoy these. Iris opened the pencil box and touched each color, then looked at Lauren and whispered thank you. She set that present carefully aside and picked up the next one, from my parents. She went through the same careful unwrapping process and found a stuffed purple elephant. My mom said she heard purple was Iris's favorite color. Iris held the elephant against her chest, and this time the thank you was a bit louder. She went through each present like this, the process taking almost an hour because she was so careful and deliberate. From my sister's family, a board game. From Zara, a friendship bracelet Zara had made herself. From Daniel and me, new clothes she'd picked out on a shopping trip and books we'd chosen together. When all the presents were opened, Iris sat surrounded by new things that belonged to her. She looked overwhelmed, but not in a bad way. More like she couldn't quite process that this was real. Zara asked if she wanted to play with the board game, and Iris nodded. The kids sat on the floor playing while the adults talked and cleaned up wrapping paper. I watched Iris playing with Zara and my sister's kids, saw her laugh at something funny that happened in the game, saw her actually being a kid for maybe the first time since we'd met her. Later in the afternoon, after everyone had left and it was just the 3 of us again, Iris asked if we could talk. We sat on the couch and she held her purple elephant tight. She said she needed to tell us something and seemed nervous. Daniel said she could tell us anything. She took a deep breath and said she'd never had a birthday before. We said we knew that and we were sorry no one had celebrated her before now. She shook her head and said we didn't understand. She'd never had a birthday before today because she didn't exist before. In the apartments where she lived with her mom, nobody knew she was there. Her mom told her to be quiet and hide when people came over. She wasn't allowed to go to school or outside or anywhere people could see her. When the neighbors called the police and they found her, that was the first time anyone who wasn't her mom knew she existed. The social workers couldn't find any birth certificate or medical records or any proof she'd been born. They had to estimate her age based on her size and teeth. They picked September 8th as her birthday because that's when they found her and decided she became real. Until today, she'd thought birthday meant the day the world found out about you. She didn't know it meant the day you were actually born. She'd thought everyone's birthday was the day they got discovered. My mind was reeling trying to process this information. Daniel asked very gently how long she'd lived in those apartments. She said she didn't know, maybe always. Her earliest memories were of being in that apartment. She remembered being hungry a lot and being alone and waiting for her mom to come back. She remembered hiding in the closet when she heard people in the hallway. She remembered the day the police came and how bright the sun was when they carried her outside, and she'd never seen the sun before except through dirty windows. The officers apparently thought she couldn't walk because she didn't know how at age 4, having spent her entire life in a small apartment. She'd learned to walk at her first foster home, learned to talk more than a few words, learned that other people existed and the world was bigger than 3 rooms. I felt like I couldn't breathe listening to this. Daniel's face was pale and his hands were clenched. Iris kept talking, saying she'd always wondered why her birthday was different from other kids' birthdays. Other kids talked about birthday parties they'd had before and presents from past years. She'd only had the one birthday, the day in the apartment when the police came. She'd thought maybe you only got one birthday and then that was it. Today was confusing because we were celebrating her birthday, but she'd already had it. Now that she understood birthdays happened every year on the same day you were born, she had questions. When was she actually born? Did her mom know? Was there a real birthday somewhere that was hers? I told her the truth, that we didn't know exactly when she was born because there were no records. The date we were using was the day she was found, but her actual birth was probably sometime around that time 7 years ago. She absorbed this and said, "So I might be 7? Or I might be different." I said the doctors were pretty sure she was 7 based on their examinations. But yes, we couldn't be completely certain. She nodded slowly and said, "That's okay. I like September 8th. That's when my life started for real anyway." A simple acceptance in her voice while my heart was breaking over what she'd endured. Daniel asked if she'd had a good birthday today and she nodded emphatically. She said it was the best day she'd ever had. She asked if we could do it again next year, and we promised we absolutely would, every single year. That night, after we'd put Iris to bed with her new stuffed elephant and the sketchbook on her nightstand, Daniel and I sat in our bedroom and didn't know what to say to each other. The level of neglect she'd survived was beyond what we'd imagined. Diane had mentioned severe neglect, but not that Iris had essentially been kept hidden from the world for the first 4 years of her life. I called Diane the next morning and relayed what Iris had told us. Diane was quiet for a long moment, then said this information wasn't in Iris's file. The mother had never cooperated with authorities, and they'd only gotten minimal information from her before she disappeared. She'd assumed Iris had been neglected but taken outside, to stores or parks. The possibility that she'd been entirely confined hadn't occurred to anyone. Diane said she'd update the file and recommended we increase Iris's therapy sessions. Iris had been seeing a child therapist named Dr. Patel once a week since the adoption. We called Dr. Patel and shared the new information. Dr. Patel said this explained several of Iris's behaviors and fears. The hoarding, the difficulty with trust, the expectation of being moved constantly. She'd spent her formative years in complete instability and isolation. Dr. Patel recommended twice-weekly sessions and possibly some specialized trauma therapy as Iris got older and could process more. We agreed to whatever would help. Over the following months, we noticed changes in Iris that seemed connected to finally having a real birthday. She started asking more questions about normal things, no longer assuming she should already know them. She asked about holidays she'd heard other kids mention. Halloween, Thanksgiving, the 4th of July. We explained each one and she'd listen carefully, sometimes taking notes in her sketchbook. When Halloween came, she was anxious about trick-or-treating. The concept of going to strangers' houses and asking for candy seemed dangerous to her. We practiced at our house first, having her knock on the door and say trick-or-treat while Daniel answered with candy. We went out with Zara and her family, sticking to houses with lights on and friendly neighbors we knew. Iris was terrified at first, but by the end of the night, she was running from house to house with Zara, laughing and comparing their candy. Back home, she dumped out her bag and stared at the pile of candy like she'd discovered treasure. She asked if she could really keep all of it, and we said yes. She organized it by color and type, then asked if it was okay to eat some. We said, of course, it's your candy. She had 2 pieces, then carefully put the rest away in a special box in her room. For Thanksgiving, my whole family came over. We explained the tradition of going around the table and saying what you're thankful for. When it was Iris's turn, she thought for a moment, then said, I'm thankful I have a birthday now. The table went quiet and my sister started crying. Iris looked worried she'd said something wrong until my mom told her that was beautiful, and we were thankful for her too. Christmas brought its own challenges and revelations. Iris had heard of Christmas but never experienced it. She'd seen it on TV in foster homes, but never had presents or a tree. We took her to pick out a tree, and she walked through the lot touching every tree like she couldn't believe they were real. She picked a small one that would fit in our living room and helped Daniel tie it to the car roof. Decorating it became a whole evening activity. We showed her each ornament and its story. Some were from Daniel's childhood, some from mine, some we'd collected together. We let her place them wherever she wanted on the tree. She was so careful, taking forever to decide where each one should go. When we finished and plugged in the lights, her face in the glow was pure wonder. She asked if the tree would stay up forever and seemed disappointed when we explained it was just for the Christmas season. She asked why people took them down, and we explained about traditions and cycles and how special things are partly special because they don't last forever. On Christmas morning, she woke us up before dawn, too excited to sleep. Under the tree were presents for all of us, but Iris focused on the ones with her name. She counted them, then recounted them, then asked if we were sure they were all for her. We assured her they were, and she could open them whenever she was ready. She started with the smallest package, using that same careful unwrapping technique from her birthday. Inside was a necklace with a small eye pendant. She put it on immediately and touched it through her shirt for the rest of the day. She opened each present slowly, exclaiming over things like new books, art supplies, a warm winter coat, fuzzy socks. When all the presents were opened, she looked at the pile of things that belonged to her and started crying. Not sad crying, but the kind of crying that comes from feeling too much. She said she didn't know she was allowed to have this much. Daniel and I both hugged her and promised she was allowed to have good things, that she deserved good things, that this was her home and her family now. The rest of that first year brought more firsts. Her first time swimming in a pool at the community center. Her first movie in an actual theater, where she was amazed by the huge screen and got scared during the loud parts. Her first time seeing the ocean when we took a weekend trip to the coast, where she was terrified of the waves but couldn't stop watching them. Each new experience came with questions and sometimes fear, but also with growing confidence that the world wasn't as dangerous as she'd learned to believe. School got easier as she caught up academically. Her teacher told us she was reading at grade level now and excelling in art. She'd made more friends beyond Zara, a small group of girls who ate lunch together and played at recess. She got invited to birthday parties and each time would ask us to help her pick out a present for the birthday kid. She took this very seriously, wanting to give something good because she understood now how important birthdays were. In therapy, Dr. Patel said Iris was making remarkable progress. She'd started talking about her memories from before, processing the trauma in age-appropriate ways. She still had hard days when she'd regress into old fears, but those days were becoming less frequent. Dr. Patel cautioned us that trauma doesn't disappear. It just becomes more manageable. Iris would likely always have triggers and difficult moments, but she was building coping skills and trust. The most significant moment came about 14 months after the adoption. We were having dinner, just a normal weeknight meal, and Iris asked if she could say something. We said of course, and she took a breath and said, "Would it be okay if I called you Mom and Dad?" I dropped my fork, and Daniel's eyes immediately filled with tears. We both said yes, absolutely yes, we would be honored. She seemed relieved and said, "Okay, good, because that's what you are." She went back to eating like she hadn't just fundamentally changed our entire world. That night, she came to say goodnight and very deliberately said, Good night, Mom. Good night, Dad. I tucked her in and kissed her forehead and left her room before I completely broke down crying in the hallway. Her second birthday with us, she helped plan the party. She wanted the same people as last year, plus a few more friends from school. She requested chocolate cake this time instead of purple frosting. She picked out her own decorations, purple and silver streamers. The morning of her birthday, she came downstairs and saw the decorations, and just smiled instead of looking confused and scared. When everyone sang happy birthday, she didn't grab my arm. She smiled and waved and blew out her candles. When asked what she wished for, she said, "I wished that every kid could have what I have." She opened presents with more confidence, tearing the paper instead of carefully peeling tape. She laughed and thanked everyone and played with her friends. Watching her at that second birthday party, I saw a completely different child from the terrified 7-year-old who hadn't known what birthdays were. This was a kid who felt safe and loved and knew she belonged. After everyone left, she asked if we could look at pictures from last year's birthday. I pulled them up on my phone and we scrolled through together. She pointed at a photo of herself holding the purple elephant, eyes wide and uncertain. She said, "I look so scared." I agreed and said she'd been very brave. She studied the photo and said, "I'm not scared anymore. Not most of the time anyway." I asked what changed and she thought carefully before answering. "Last year, I didn't know if I got to stay. I thought maybe birthdays were something that happened once and then you had to leave. But I got to stay. And we did it again. So now I know it's real. The simple logic of a child who'd learned that good things could actually last." Now, at 9 years old, Iris is thriving in ways we couldn't have imagined that first year. She's in 4th grade and getting straight A's. She's on a soccer team and scored 2 goals last season. She has sleepovers with friends and goes to birthday parties and does all the normal kid things we'd worried she'd never feel comfortable doing. She still sees Dr. Patel monthly for maintenance therapy. She still has hard days when old fears surface. But she knows now that she has a birthday, that she's always had one even if nobody celebrated it before. She knows she was born and exists and matters. She knows she has a family who isn't going anywhere. Every September 8th, we celebrate not just her birthday, but the resilience of a little girl who survived unimaginable neglect and came out the other side capable of trust and love. This year, she asked if we could volunteer at a foster care organization for her birthday. She wants to help other kids who don't know they're allowed to have good things. We're going to make gift bags with toys and supplies, and Iris is writing cards for each one. She showed me what she wrote. "You deserve good things. You deserve to be celebrated. Happy birthday, whenever yours is." That's what my daughter, who didn't know what a birthday was, has become. A 9-year-old who understands profound loss and chooses to help others anyway. Who knows what it's like to have nothing and wants to make sure other kids have something. Who went from hiding in closets to playing soccer in the sun. The journey from that first birthday to now hasn't been easy or simple. There have been setbacks and struggles and moments where we questioned if we were doing enough. But watching her blow out 9 candles this year, surrounded by people who love her, singing along to her own birthday song, that's when I knew we'd given her something that could never be taken away. The knowledge that she matters, that she was born and her existence is worth celebrating, that she has a birthday and a family and a future. And somehow, in the process of teaching her what birthdays mean, she taught us something more important, that it's never too late to start celebrating someone's life, that every child deserves to know they matter, that love and consistency can help heal even the deepest wounds. My daughter didn't know what a birthday was, and it destroyed me, but helping her understand, watching her heal, seeing her become who she was always meant to be, that rebuilt me into someone better, someone worthy of being called mom. Thanks for hanging out till the end. If you want more stories, make sure to subscribe and leave your take below.